I liked X. In fact, I liked it quite a bit. It has a brilliant cast, great premise, vibrant cinematography, and is overall just a great horror film. But really, it was Pearl that grabbed my attention. I liked it even more, it had the same actress in the titular role, and the cinematography was even more notable, mainly because it's so opposed to the film's themes. And that's exactly what I want to dive into today, by covering what I mean by juxtaposed cinematography, looking at the cinematography style of Pearl, the use of Technicolor, why the cinematography works so well as the production in general, and how unique the film series actually is. So what do I even mean by juxtaposed cinematography? Well, in simple terms, I mean that visually the film doesn't match the theme in a stereotypical way, but in a bit more depth, the cinematography style is that of a 60s musical. It's full of colour, is shot in 2.39:1, is set in a seemingly peaceful part of the country, yet the story is a vicious horror. Now, we've seen this before. Midsummer, Suspiria. Horror films that are full of horrifying moments, but are also bursting with colour, and the cinematography doesn't necessarily fit with the narrative. It's the same with Pearl, but in my opinion, even more so. It was shot back to back with X, and the cinematography there, whilst being great, also managed to pay homage to gritty 70s horror films through the film the characters were making. They had a cinematography style within a cinematography style, but that's a subject for another video. However, that does lead me on to the cinematography style of Pearl. And I think it's safe to say that Pearl is an homage to vintage cinema, and we can gather that without even watching the film. Just by the stills or trailer alone, it feels like classic Hollywood. Even the font is reminiscent of that 50s style. But if we roll back to X really quickly, we can see that it was inspired by the golden age of slasher movies. Films like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which, incidentally enough, really reminds me of the final scene in Pearl, Halloween, and I'd even go as far as to say the Blair Witch Project. But Pearl leans more into films like The Wizard of Oz, Mary Poppins, and other 3-strip Technicolor films when it comes to the visual style. However, that wasn't always the case, as Ty West also toyed with the idea of going black and white, but with the rise of other black and white movies like The Lighthouse, Macbeth, Malcolm and Marie, he opted against it, and I think it's safe to say that the right choice was made. But what does that term Technicolor mean? Well, when I say Technicolor, I'm not talking about the company. I'm talking about the stereotypical golden age of Hollywood's vibrant colour, and not the post-1995 refined use of it. Now, in simple terms, Technicolor is the series of processes that was used to achieve colour in early cinema. There have been a few different processes, however today I'm going to focus on 3-strip Technicolor, as it's the most famous one, as well as the one that inspired the look of Pearl. So before 3-strip, films could still be shot in colour, however they were limited to the red-green spectrum, resulting in colour films but not the kind they wanted. So in the new camera, they exposed 3 strips of black and white film instead of 1, each recording a different colour of the spectrum, red, green and blue. But how did they achieve that famous saturated colour? Well, it's done through the post-process. Technicolor used subtractive synthesis instead of additive synthesis, which is what the competitors were using, and then through a process of different colour filters and light prisms, we were gifted with the greatest colour to ever hit our screens. So that was simplified to the extreme due to time reasons, but I'm really interested in this topic, so watch out for a future video all about Technicolor. But why does this cinematography style work here? Well, I think there are a couple of reasons. Firstly, it's a really nice contrast to X. The story is slightly more light-hearted in a very weird way, and the cinematography represents that. But it also adds to the overall feel that the trilogy has to offer. If all 3 were the same in cinematic style, it would add an essence of uniform, which is always nice. But having 3 separate cinematography styles, as I'm assuming Maxine will, separates them from all other horror franchises. Scream, Halloween, pretty much everyone out there, and in today's world, that can only be a good thing. But what about Pearl specifically? Well, this kind of style really has an effect on the audience. It makes us feel more comfortable for some reason. Maybe it's the bright colours, the standout costumes, maybe it's everything. but whatever it is, it's subverting our attention away from the fact that we are watching the story of a murderous psycho. Now, before I finish, I just want to quickly look over the production of Pearl, as whilst I have heard of films shot like this before, it's extremely rare. This section is more about praising the production of this film though, as 1, they did an incredible job, and 2, I can't find anything about the equipment Elliott rockets used. So this was shot back to back with X, and this isn't new. It happens with The War and Peace, Superman, Back to the Future 2 and 3, Kill Bill, but this one feels different. And I think it's down to the fact that it's a film set decades before with the same lead and no time travel. Now, the standout in both of these films is the fact that Mia Goth stars in 2 or 3 roles depending on how you look at it. Maxine Minx, Old Pearl, and Young Pearl, with it indicated that she'll also be back for Maxine, but that's me going purely off the title. Looking at the equipment though, I can't. I really wanted to make a whole segment surrounding it like I always do, go into depth about the cameras and lenses, but there was nothing on IMDb. There were no articles, I even looked through the credits, and whilst there is a logo for Avid so I can assume they edited there, I couldn't see one for Arri, Red, Panavision, or any major camera manufacturer or lens manufacturer for that matter. So maybe in the future the DP does an interview, but for now, I'm completely lost. So where does that leave us? Well, it should leave us very excited for Maxine, and like I've said in previous videos, this is a film franchise with huge potential, and that's without the Mia Goth novelty, if you can even call it that. Pearl is, in essence, an ode to vintage horror, whether that's by visual style alone or just as a whole, and I thank Ty West for bringing 3 genres, or what I hope is 3 genres of horror, back to life in a very exciting way. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Note if you did, if you have a recommendation for an analysis, leave it down below. Thanks so much for watching, and maybe I'll see you next time. Bye!